All right, Chris, I want to start, I guess, in the third grade when you are playing Nerf basketball with your brother, and he is playing, and you are in your suit with your notepad, drawing up plays for him as the coach. Was that more, hey, I see a future in coaching, or was that I like to coach, or was that, hey, I have an older brother who's not really letting me play with this Nerf basketball?
Yeah, probably getting dunked on a few too many times on the Nerf hoop. At our grade school, my brother was 4.5 years older than I was, so he played for our grade school coach was a man named Neil Brazell, and he was we lived in the northeast section of Philadelphia, and just about my father was a bus driver. A lot of parents were police officers or firefighters or blue collar, and Mr. Brazell actually was a businessman. And so we played, the games were played at a really, really small tile floor gym at the public school, because our Catholic school didn't have a gym. But our school always had great uniforms. My brother was a really good player, and Mr. Brazell would wear a three-piece suit usually to the games, having come from work. And he had gone to Wake Forest. He was 6'4", square jaw, really, really imposing presence. And yeah, I would go to the games, with my parents to watch my brother play. And he was just, such a towering figure. And what he talked to the guys about, and, he would always talk about how you carry yourself. And that was really important and impactful to my brother. And I just was mesmerized by him and by that. I still have that image in my head all the time of when I hear, the term coach. That's the first person and image and feeling that I think of is Mr. Brazell coaching. And by the time I got to 7th and 8th grade, he was no longer coaching. So unfortunately, I missed the opportunity to play for him. But yeah, that has really had such a lasting impact on me. And it was one of the first things I can remember about basketball, even beyond the plays and my brother playing.
Being a Philly guy, obviously it's, everybody loves the Eagles there. And so but when did basketball become your thing? I mean, was it just, hey, I'm looking up to my older brother and he was in it?
A little bit was that. And then, we kind of played, in our neighborhood, played all the sports. We're baseball, football, played a little soccer. And probably in 7th grade or so, it became that basketball was more year round, or, we'd be in a spring league and in a summer league, and playground obviously was always open. And I think when that happened, and I started to play in the Sunny Hill League in Philadelphia, which has the best, at the time, I don't know it as well now, but at the time had the very best players in the city. And you could go down and play against the best. And I just saw how good these guys were and how much time I needed to dedicate to it. And so basketball just became something that I did all the time. And the other sports kind of fell by the wayside. Same time, my brother was a really good high school player, and watching him. But I think the opportunity to play year round and, go play in a game down at Temple University in the Sunny Hill League and come back and still go to the playground and get in the last couple of runs there was just the best. And that was something that really swayed it for me, just that constant time to play and enjoy it and try to work and get better.
You end up going to Princeton to play there for the legendary Pete Carril, who we unfortunately just lost. What's your first memory of getting to meet sort of the mad scientist?
Yeah. It's pretty vivid. He came to watch us play at my high school, Archbishop Ryan, and we played after school, and most days we did. And, this was the fall of my senior year, and a lot of coaches were coming through to see myself. And we had a couple of other players who were being recruited. And Coach, it was a big deal that Coach Carril and Bill Carmody, his then assistant, were coming. And he watched us play for about an hour and a half. And we went back into a classroom to talk. And a lot of the coaches who would come through the school, or I would, after they would talk for a while, I would ask them what my weaknesses were and kind of ask some questions for them to be honest. And for Coach Carrill, we sat down and he just immediately tore apart my game and ridiculed, and he had such an incredible memory. And, he said that I cost our team the second game that we played for a play that I made late in the game. And he told me I came down the same side of the court every time, which was a concern. Told me how slow I was multiple times, how unathletic. And that went for about 5 or 10 minutes. And to be honest, I was sold. I loved it. It was kind of stunning, but he was right on everything that he said. And I think I knew that he was right on everything that he said. And that was it. Now, I didn't know then that would be a preview of the next 4 years of my life. But yeah, I was just sold because of how straightforward he was and what the eye that he had for basketball and mistakes and things that I could improve upon. I thought I was just sold immediately.
Basketball fans just know about that vaunted Princeton style. It's just, we're going to walk it up and we're going to just surgically dissect you in a generally low scoring game. Normally, as someone who played in that system, did you enjoy it? I mean, do you enjoy playing games in the 40s back in the day?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that, I loved how we played and in terms of how we shared the ball and those kinds of things. I think for the most part, the scores were lower, the better our opponent was, because we were trying to be, pretty deliberate. We always talked about getting a good shot. Well, against North Carolina State, it's a little harder to get a good shot. And, I think when we were practicing and we were playing in Ivy League games or something, then the score, it was a little bit more of a normal pace, and if you remember at the time, Villanova won the national championship in 85 and North Carolina State won the national championship 83. The pace of games wasn't quite what it is today. So even though when the games were on TV and we were playing a great opponent, the pace was pretty deliberate. It wasn't so much more deliberate than the Villanova Georgetown game. But when we played in practice, the shots came a little bit more quickly. We ran more, and I could see what we were doing. I think when we had to try to beat one of the elite teams in the country, then you're going to have to do some things that, that favor you or take away some of their advantages. And I think that's what people, since we were on TV 2 or 3 times a year, those are the games they were going to put on TV. And I think that's what people kind of saw and remembered. But in my mind, that's not how we were playing every day at practice, or we weren't ever talking about frustrating the team or being slow or anything like that. That never came up.
I'm sure we could go on for an hour or a day or a week about all the things you learned from Pete Carrill, but just as a head coach now and looking back on your time with him now, 30 years ago, what's at the top of the list? The one coaching lesson that you take from him that you are still able to apply today?
Being honest. We joke that it would be hard for him to be a coach today because, he was very, very direct, very honest, colorful language, just about always right, which really served him well. But I would say being honest, really, in the recruiting process, in the coaching process, and maybe you have to do it not quite as harshly today or not as harshly as often today. But I would say that would probably be the most important thing. And, there are times when it comes down to the wire in recruiting or in coaching or trying to talk to the guys where you're tempted to maybe manipulate the players or manipulate the truth. And that's just something that I learned that didn't work out well. And the most important thing was to be honest, keep your head down, be honest, work hard, and that that the players will improve, and I think the players will respect you even if they don't like the message all the time. I think they'll respect you and feel comfortable in a place where it's always going to be honest discussion.
You get out of Princeton, you apply for a job at Lansdale Catholic High School with a handwritten resume that you faxed in. Is that urban legend or is that an actual story?
Well, it was faxed. I don't think it was handwritten.
Okay.
Though I would have to ask Frank Giovanizzi, who was the athletic director who hired me. I think it was faxed, but I don't believe it was handwritten.
Okay.
I think
as a Princeton graduate, I'm glad to hear that.
I think my original application to Princeton was handwritten, and the woman in the the counseling office was of a school of 3,000 students was kind enough to call Princeton and ask them to resend one so that we could type it, which I'll be forever grateful. But I believe it was only fax. And if you remember at the time, faxes came out on that different paper and,
sure,
all folded up. Not my best.
But you got the job. It took 2 interviews though, correct?
It did take 2 interviews. Yes. The first interview, Frank, who was he had put a committee together, pretty impressive committee. Paul Kranak, who runs an art store in town, an impressive group. And I came in a suit and tie, and Frank invited me to come back later in the week, told me to wear sweatpants and relax, and they gave me the job then. And I think, he says I was terrible in the first interview. And for him to give me that opportunity was just incredible.
So are you interviewing for a basketball job that a teaching job came with it? Or are you interviewing as a teacher that, oh, by the way, there's some extracurricular basketball?
No, I was interviewing for the basketball coaching job. There was not a teaching job that came with it. When I was able to get the job, I later applied for and accepted a job as a teacher in one of the local Catholic grade schools,
Gotcha.
Grammar schools, as we call them. And so I taught 6th grade there, maybe 2 miles from the high school.
So the bad first interview, regardless. You have any idea what you're doing in there? How you're supposed to sell yourself or what sort of vision you're trying to put forward, or are you just trying to survive this interview?
So I'm sure it was terrible, and I'm sure I did not know what I was doing, but I didn't go in there blind and expecting because I was a former player or something like that I was going to get the job. I was prepared, and I had been thinking about coaching, since the 3rd grade. So, and I had coached summer league for my high school a couple of the summers. So, and I had a concept that it was an entire program and a freshman team, JV varsity, and how important the children were to the parents and the teachers and the administration. So I did have a inkling of an idea, mainly because I had thought about it so often. I think I was probably much more prepared technically and basketball wise, having played for Coach Kirill, but I think I did have a little bit of an inkling, even though apparently I did so poorly.
How were you as everything was in your brain and you have this wealth of knowledge, but at that young age, how were you as a communicator and trying to get all that knowledge in your brain out to the masses?
Yeah, I would say decent. Again, I was copying a lot of Coach Kirill. I probably tried to eliminate some of the things that he had coach guys because they were college players, but I had a pretty good idea of, we didn't run as sophisticated an offense as the Princeton offense, but I had a pretty good idea of what might be able to work. And, I was a pretty hard charger and demanding and raised my voice a lot. And, we had long practices, and I think the first practices I asked the parents to leave because it had been a little bit of a tradition at Lansdale Catholic. The parents would come to practice. And I asked them to leave because I know I'd be raising my voice a lot. And we had really long practices. I was fairly disorganized, but not on the court. I knew what our practices were going to look like. I knew I had an idea of how to coach the best players, which is always really important. And yeah, I think, I'm sure I made a tremendous amount of mistakes. But I think we did there was some urgency there that was probably important for that particular group. And there was a commitment there. The coaches were in all the time and willing to work with guys. And so as much as it was probably a shock in how long we were practicing, how hard we were going, it was also, I'm sure there were some positive aspects from the guys' perspective that it was very serious. And that, that everything we were doing, we were trying to do well, and we were trying to win games.
How were you as a grammar school English teacher?
I tell you, it's really an incredibly difficult job. There were about 30 kids in the class. We switched for math and language arts. So I taught a lot, religion, science, social studies, language arts. It's a really hard job. Those are long days. You're constantly on. I was unique because I might have been the first male teacher that they had. So I had that advantage. I was the basketball coach at the local high school. So I had that advantage. I was very unprepared and disorganized. Those were disadvantages. But I did try pretty hard, and I did try to connect with the students. I'd have lunch with one student a day, and I did try to help and try to do my best, but it's such a demanding job. And I always think of that when we have, long weeks here or lots of travel and recruiting or something like that. I'm nowhere close to as tired as I was after a day of teaching.
3 years there at Lansdale Catholic, and then you head to Beaver College, now known as Arcadia, Division III school. What prompted them? It's a part-time job. What prompted the move, other than maybe moving up into the college game?
Yeah, I had one of my really good friends' dad was a coach at a high school in the area, which would have been considered a better job than Lansdale Catholic, and I had the opportunity to take that job. And I thought, what, I'm going to stay at Lansdale Catholic. If I'm going to stay in high school, I'm going to stay here. We were good. It was a great place. We had great people supporting us and whatnot. And then the Beaver College job opened, and it was part-time, but they did have a job also open, which was director of conference services, which ironically, that's what I did in the summers at Princeton. So I worked for a woman named Cindy Hoare at Princeton for 5 summers in the conference services office. I could stay on campus and have meals and room and board and whatnot. And so they had this position available at Beaver College. And, I was still young. I was probably 26, but I had 5 summers worth of experience. I mean, I really knew this conference. I knew it from, an account representative, an account supervisor role. I didn't know it thoroughly, but I could talk about it and talk about groups and what are the important things that when you're hosting a group on campus, how to attract a group to campus, check-in processes, those kinds of things. I could talk to that. And so I interviewed first for the basketball job, and then came back and interviewed for and they both of those, the athletic director reported to the same dean as the conference services, dean of student services, I believe, that the conference services job reported to. And so, yeah, I was able to get both of those jobs, and, be interesting to see the pool of candidates they had. It was not, I'm sure it's a full-time job now. I don't know how many D3 jobs, the better D3 jobs in the area were full-time. And this one wasn't. So I don't know if how many college, I don't think there would have been any Division I assistants going for the job. I think it probably been a lot of Division III guys and high school coaches. And yeah, I got the job, and it was late in the summer, and both jobs were extremely challenging.
I know you've told this a million times, but I've got to get into the weeds a little bit on this secondary job about the wedding planning. I mean, I can't even, at 47, I couldn't imagine trying to deal with brides and helping them get out, let alone be in your mid-20s and just, let's go, ladies. Let's show you about, the day of your dreams is coming.
Yeah.
Here's how I can help. So.
Right. So Beaver College had a castle on the campus. So it was originally the grounds that became the campus had this castle. It's a beautiful place. The campus is very pretty. And the castle had students living in the second and third floor, but it has a beautiful entrance and some beautiful ballrooms. And at the time, Beaver College would host alumni weddings in the castle. And I had proposed to increase revenue that we host weddings from anybody and give the alumni, a significant discount. And so this was approved, which was great in terms of being able to raise revenue. But we could only have the weddings or baptisms or events when school was out of session because their students lived there. So we did, and at the end, it turned out well. I mean, most of the Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays in the out of school were booked with weddings or some events. But it was really, John, again, as you said, I'm 26 years old. I'm probably showing the bride, her potential wedding site in my basketball shoes. I'm sweeping the floor in the gym and washing the uniforms. Then I'm kind of doing most of the coordinating of the schedule around campus. So meetings and things like that. I have a database that I'm keeping. I'm trying to attract groups in the summer. And then these weddings are I'm meeting brides year round, 2 or 3 a week. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I had never hosted a party or had people over, in my life. And I'm talking about, where they could put the band and, do the happy hour or whatnot. And there were a few mistakes that I made. And, but all in all, it turned out to be something positive, because that job in reality, I had mentioned being disorganized as a teacher and a coach.
Yeah.
That job in reality, it really made me be organized. I mean, the job was organization because I was handling all the scheduling of the campus, around campus. And that job really made me be organized. And I'm very thankful that I had that opportunity, because I had to organize, every room on campus during the course of the week, and then the brides. And then I had to organize my own schedule in terms of going recruiting, what I had to do on campus, practicing. So it really, really helped me a great deal.
When I was in college, I coached a freshman high school team, and one year we had 6 kids on the team, and it was a lonely bench. It was hard to have practice because everything in your mind, you want to go 5-on-5, and obviously you're just going 3-on-3. And then we had games where 2 kids would foul out, and my team was on the floor with 4. You only had 6 kids on that first team for a while. How did you have to sort of recalibrate your brain and everything, and just trying to put together the best product you can, not even remotely being able to go 5-on-5 most days?
Yeah, it was that part was nearly impossible. And now I will say this: we had a couple of really good players of those 6 guys.
I did not.
Actually,
so advantage you.
Yeah.
Good job.
We actually had 5 recruited players and one walk-on, and so it was really challenging. I think Division III, I don't know if the rules are the same, but 10 days before practice starts, you can do conditioning. So of course, everybody wants to work with a basketball, but you can only do conditioning. And we got there and we did the series of sprints for about 20, 25 minutes. And we were going to do a mile run and then do more sprints. And the guys, of course, they were a little stunned by this. So I think we had 9 guys there. And I think we said, hey, we're going to take a drink. We'll meet you on the track in 5 minutes. And I think we had 6 guys return. I think I said, if you don't come back from the drink, don't worry about coming back. I wish I hadn't said that. And so, yeah, that was really hard. We had a guy named Bobby Cayucci and Daryl Hilliard, Carlos Sanders, some good players, but only having 6 players was nearly impossible. Similar situation. We had, a guy, 2 guys foul out of a game. We had to finish a game with 4. We had a guy, we had 1 guy had fouled out and a guy got hit below the belt with the ball and needed to wait the full amount of time that he could resume activity. So it was really tough. And practices were just impossible. I had assistants who were trying to play, but it was pretty impossible.
I probably could have gone to clinics and taught my 2-2 zone because we had to run that a lot that year. How did you enjoy? I mean, you've been a head coach at the high school level. Now you're a head coach at the D3 level. Just the running your program and wins and losses aside, just how did you enjoy the job?
Yeah, I enjoyed the Lansdale Catholic job much more. There was greater infrastructure. There was a greater, there was a commitment to, the Lansdale Catholic had a good athletic tradition and things in place that we really needed more so. So I enjoyed Lansdale Catholic much more. And the Beaver College part was so hard with so few guys. And then consequently, the next year, because of those, then I think we graduated 3 of the 6. So the next year we had 12 freshmen, and transferring wasn't quite as much of a thing. We had 1 transfer. So 12 freshmen, their first time in college, trying to compete. And we had a very good second year, and we had some good players. I think we finished second in our league, but it was hard. It was much, we're recruiting constantly. In Division III, there's no calendar. So we're recruiting almost every night. And when I say that, I mean literally almost every night. And at Lansdale Catholic, there would be a good crowd at games, and at Division III and our particular league, there was very few people go to the games. So it was hard and again, incredibly valuable. And I loved, like you said, the idea of making the schedule work and trying to fill recruiting needs, which were many, and going and asking people to support our program, and trying to work hard with the athletic director and the dean to try to get things that we could use to make the experience better for the players. Those things were incredibly valuable, but going through them is really, really hard. And so I love that. I've always loved being a coach, but that was certainly a gigantic challenge for myself, for our coaches, for everyone.
2000, for the first time, you get to be an assistant. Your old assistant coach at Princeton, Joe Scott, gets the head coaching job at Air Force. Does he call you? Do you call him? How does that marriage take place?
Yeah, so it goes to show how long ago this was, but I found, I found out, I think, in the newspaper the next morning, and there were rumors that Joe was interviewing and phone calls among, some of the guys I played with in college. But, it wasn't like this, there, no Twitter and
right.
Social media and things. And so I found out, and my first thought was that I'd have a great chance to be an assistant at Princeton. At the time, though there are a lot of guys in coaching at Princeton, I probably was the only other one beside Joe and John Thompson. John was already on the staff. Joe had just taken the Air Force job. Mike Brennan, who's at American now, he may have just come back from played overseas for a few years. So that was my initial thought, that I would have a great chance to go to Princeton and be an assistant coach. And I think that Joe called me. I think I called Coach Carmody. We talked about coming up to meet, later in that week. And then Joe called and said, I'd like the chance to talk to you before that. And so I went up and met with Joe, and, within a few minutes, maybe within 30 minutes, I think we were talking about what we could do, how we could build it. Here are the challenges, and basically had decided. And I was so won over by his passion and intensity, which I had known, but this was different. This was someone who was becoming a head coach and at Division I. And I was just really just so inspired by that, like just how he was thinking about it, and thought that I could really help. And I can remember that really vividly also, just that feeling that I had talking to him. And I accepted the job on the spot, and off we went.
A Philly guy, an East Coast guy, and yet was there any pause at all about, I'm going to uproot and go 3/4 of the way across the country?
Not for me. For my wife, there was a little bit more nerve-wracking, but not for me. I just, at that time, Beaver College was hard and was a struggle. And, I had some interviews and didn't get jobs. I had interviewed at Columbia, I'd interviewed at LaSalle. And, I was kind of thinking.
For assistant jobs?
Yes, for assistant jobs.
Gotcha.
And I was kind of thinking, like, man, if I don't get something at some point, I think I gave myself till I was like 31 or 32 if I could break into Division I. And so I then couldn't put a geographic marker on it, to say, well, I'm not going to go here or there. And I would have gone anywhere. And luckily Colorado Springs is a great place, and the academy is prestigious and beautiful. But yeah, I would have gone anywhere for sure. You've now gone,
from 6 guys at Beaver to now you're an assistant at the Division I level. And obviously Service Academy, there's some unique aspects to coaching at a place like that, but you're still coaching Division I. What was sort of the biggest, oh boy, moment for you that I'm not a Beaver anymore?
Probably the first game day. I remember coming in, a few hours before shoot around, and just how many people were working on setting up the arena and the sound check and the lighting and the scorers table and cleaning the backboards. That was probably, in a 6,000 seat arena. And that was probably, honestly, the thing that was like, wow, like, look how much this matters. Look how many people are invested in this. And, and then you had the Jim Arthur, who did the radio, and the sports information guys buzzing, and the popcorn stands opening. It was just, that was probably the thing, is just the TV cameras being set up, the cable being dragged in there, and just like how many people this was important to, and how many people are involved and invested.
4 years there. Coach Scott goes back to Princeton. Is this a foregone conclusion that you're going to be promoted to the head coach, or was there some work to be done at that point?
No, it actually was a foregone conclusion. I was really the coach in waiting. Earlier in that year, the Naval Academy coach, Don DeVoe, who had been an incredibly successful, long tenured coach, announced his retirement. And, they had some great candidates, because Don DeVoe had a great regime. Doug Wojcik was a candidate. I know they had another candidate as well, but a couple of those guys had turned down the job, and it was still during the season. And meanwhile, we're having this tremendous season at Air Force. And one of the officers in the athletic department had said that, the Naval Academy had expressed interest in talking to you. And I said, wow, that'd be incredible. known about Navy. We had played them a couple of times. Annapolis is a beautiful place. They had been very, very good in the Patriot League over the last 10 or 12 years. And so I remember I sat down and spoke with the Air Force officer, and he talked about, if I stayed at Air Force, that I could become the head coach there, and they would love to continue. And because, Joe was really had a very hot name because we were doing so great. And so we had kind of agreed that I could be the coach in waiting if I decided to stay at Air Force. And I remember my wife and I went out to dinner that night, and I thought, I would have thought that I would be going crazy about the opportunity to talk to Navy about being the head coach, but I didn't have that feeling. I don't know if it was because we were in the middle of this season at Air Force or what the case might have been, but I just thought that staying at Air Force was better. And, not knowing what would happen with Joe, having a good idea that he was on everybody's radar. And so we just made the decision to stay. And then, I think whenever Joe decided to become the Princeton coach or was offered the job, I think we had our press conference at Air Force before they had it at Princeton. So it was pretty well done.
I mean, you're 4 years removed from admittedly a difficult situation at a D3 school, and you've given yourself that timetable to get into the D1 game, and then 4 years later, you're now running your own program. I have to imagine in some quiet times and maybe not so quiet times that you're just like, I can't believe, I mean, you're 32, 33 at that point that I can't believe this has happened.
Yeah, I was. It was really mind blowing. That the reason Joe went to Princeton is John Thompson took the Georgetown job, and it was really a deliberate process. So there wasn't as much to read or speculation, and so it seemed like it took 4 weeks, 5 weeks, but that John was the kind of the surefire candidate. And so, it was, I just thought, wow, this could really happen. I've known great coaches who stay at high school their whole career, who coaches in Division III or, beat Beaver College badly, who stay at the D3 level, assistants who I had become good friends with, who haven't gotten the opportunity for one reason or another. I was blown away. We had done some things, Joe, myself, the rest of the staff had done some things to build a good program that a rational, good decision would be to keep the program going like this, but that wasn't just me, that was everybody. Especially Joe, who had, was kind of really pretty miraculous for Air Force to be a top 25 team and getting that large bid. So, I was just blown away. I think one thing that helped me is that Beaver College was so challenging. The academies are challenging places compared to the Mountain West teams at the time, BYU, Utah, New Mexico, Colorado State, San Diego State. But for me, it was incredible, just the support and the commitment and the level of players we had, the level of people and players that we were able to interact with. That was incredible to me. So if you were a Division I coach for 15 years and went to an academy, what would stick out to you would be the roadblocks and the difficulties that you have. For me, it was just heaven. It was great to have that, whatever we needed. It felt like whatever we needed, we were able to get and really help. And there was so much commitment to those players and to try to win. So I think my attitude about it was positive. There was very little complaining from Joe on down. And I think that also set a really positive vibe in our program and in our culture, that this is the greatest thing in the world. And I think that probably helped me and probably helped everybody.
Chris, last question before I let you get out of here that we ask everybody. Your journey to being a Division I coach was shorter than a lot of people's, but still took a rather unique path to get there. What is the one piece of advice that you could pass on to that young coach trying to get into the game that one day wants to be the leader of their own Division I program?
Yeah, I would say, like a lot of things, if you looked at the odds of becoming a Division I coach, they're long, and it's going to be very, very hard to do. There's no exact way. I wouldn't think anybody's going to do it the way I did it, for sure. Going a wedding coordinator route. There's no one way to do it. There are some things that could help. It seems like playing at Duke, those guys, have a really good shot ultimately becoming head coaches. Coach Patino has had so many guys become head coaches. But there's no one single way. A lot of times people will give you the advice that this is what I did. But whether you could go become a grad assistant, or you go become a volunteer or a head coach, Division III, there's no one way to do it. And there are a lot of circumstances, and the odds are long, but ultimately there are going to be people that get those jobs, and that you have to work all the time on putting yourself in a position to having the opportunity to get those jobs. The thing that I would say is that if you're married, make sure that commitment is shared, because it's a demanding job to be the Division I head coach. It's really demanding. It's more demanding to try to get there. There are a lot of nights and weekends and Christmas breaks that they're not as fun. But I would say there's not one single path, but every stop on your path, do the best part that you can. I would say this: when we were at Air Force, Mike McKee, who's now the head coach at LaSalle High School in Philly, we would talk about having your fingerprints on the program. So whatever program you're involved with, is having your fingerprints involved in the recruiting and the camp in the summer, in the junior day, working out the freshmen, opening the gym for the JV team, being an extra guy if you can still play in a scrimmage. I think having your fingerprints on as many aspects of the program, whatever program you're in, is the best way to impact that program, the best way to get experience in doing everything, and then hopefully bringing that experience to your next stop.